This podcast is sponsored by CDO Group, the industry leader in providing a full range of construction and project management services. CDO Group has managed thousands of projects in all 50 states. Their group of experts provides systems, processes, and procedures to make sure that your projects turn over on time and on budget every single time. With over 24 years of experience, CDO Group is the industry's leader in construction management and general contracting services. To find them, go to cdogroup.com. Hi, and welcome to the Future of Development podcast. My name's Anthony Amunategui, and I'm here to inspire people to find amazing careers in the construction development world. If you like our podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really like our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Hi, welcome to the Future of Development podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Amunategui, and today I'm joined by the construction technologist, Dominic Delfino. His group over at Fieldwire are doing some amazing things. Let's welcome Dominic to the show. Dominic, welcome to the show. We're excited about having you live in the studio, right? We don't get to do this often, and it's awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Yeah, excited. I mean, being in person now is a lot different. I mean, we've been going in person to some events as a company in the last 6 months, but nothing like doing a podcast live in person. So getting off Zoom. I mean, seeing you right here face to face, it is... it is a breath of fresh air.
Right. It's kind of fun to get to shake hands and actually do that whole piece. So as the world's opening up again and we're getting excited about getting out and meeting each other, this is the time to do it. And you've got a great product to talk about. We are noticing that across all the interviews that we're doing, how important and the transition of construction technologies is really growing. And we're it's a lot of fun. And Fieldwire, you guys are really leading the pack with that. So great to have you on the show.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. And yeah, with us, with us, we've looked at construction technology. We've been in the space for about 8 years. I've been with the company for 5 years, but just the growth I've seen, being out on the field side before joining Fieldwire and now coming into it 5 years ago. And in the last 5 years, where it's at now, it's wild to think that we didn't have this 8 years ago when I first was in the industry, or just technology as a focus. I think there's always been software that people have looked at and used, and it's been important to more the back office operations. But once we start to look at, well, how do we impact people in the field, and how do we impact just the process of how we transfer data and track our projects, that's where I'm starting to see a lot of, I would say, even more futuristic tech, coming into this space. And I know that's something, we talked about in the pre-show was like, hey, well, you guys got acquired by Hilti, and Hilti's doing a lot of cool things on the technology side as well. And we're doing what we do with the field side. So I think there's a nice blend there that you're starting to see, people moving into that more futuristic state, but us just revolutionizing and getting adaptability from everyone on the construction job site. So yeah, it's quite the journey I've seen in my 5 years in Contact and the 5 years previously in just construction in general.
Well, it was always kind of funny that when I first started in construction, to get people to have computers were no way. There was like no way you could have a computer on a job site. Fax machines were the one, right? They try to get people to have I remember I would have to put it in their contract. Hey, you've got to have our contractors had to have a fax machine on a job site. I was a project manager at Buster Market or Einstein Bagels, and I would write in their contract, you have to have that, and you have to send me Polaroid pictures every week, right? You'd have to, they'd take these Polaroids and they'd overnight them to me the next day. And that's how I could see the job site. And the idea was that it was tough because they were construction people, and construction people didn't have it. But what's funny about that was they were all going home at night. And some of them were, I know our family was, we were in the construction, we had a computer in our living room. Right. But it wasn't something you brought on a job site. It was something that was in our living room. And it took a minute for us to really start to think about construction and bringing that technology to the job site. It felt at the time like that was an impossible task. Like it just didn't belong there.
I mean, technology to the job site. I mean, and again, I started back in 2008 in the industry, and I would get a flip phone. Remember those? And if you got a color flip phone, that was even more impressive. You're like, oh, and then you take the picture and you're like, yeah, this isn't as good as that 5 megapixel digital camera that we have. Use that instead. And you're like, okay, well, that, documenting the job site was a thing. I wrote down Polaroids. I hadn't heard that one before, actually.
Oh, yeah.
That was impressive. That turnaround time, I wonder what that looked like.
They were great. They were Polaroid pictures. And I remember the first time we got them in our office, we got this a case of, maybe it was like 15 of them or 20 of them. And everybody got a Polaroid, and you got a stack of these disposable film. And the problem is when you traveled, it couldn't go through the x-ray. Right, you have to do this whole explanation of, listen, that's a Polaroid camera, and I don't want to mess up the film. So, and they were always worried about it getting exposed, and I don't know why it was going to get exposed. But so then that transition started to happen, and fax machines became the norm. And then I remember we started to say, look, we need a phone line on every job site because we need that fax machine, right? So we need the phone line, and somebody came up with a camera that worked on phone lines. So every 7 minutes, I could get a picture, right? And it would just it'd open the phone line, and it could send me this picture every 7 minutes. And the first job we put them on was a job in Manhattan. And every single day, the union guys would cut the phone line. And we're like, I don't know who you guys think you are. Your big brother is not watching my job site. And we're like, no, we're trying to communicate to the vendors and the people. And they're like, no, you're watching our job site. You're trying to see what we're doing. And I'm like, no, we're really trying to communicate to the team. And it felt a little big brotherish. And every day the guy would go fix the phone line, and he'd get it back up again. And, and today, we're seeing that transition. If you look at a job site today, there are multiple communication devices. We have a minimum of 4 job site cameras on every job. I mean, small or large, we have them inside, outside, because you can't see the job. You can't communicate to the vendors without them. Every person has a cell phone. Every superintendent has a laptop and an iPad that they walk around, and they communicate instantly with the architect and the team. And that has become the norm. And as we get smarter and smarter, we're starting to see that we can communicate faster and faster. And I think that's one of the neat things about Fieldwire is that you guys have organized it in a way that really makes it easy. You guys went bottom up instead of top down. And I think our superintendents can see that a lot easier than the ones where it takes a weekend or two to get trained. It was Fieldwire. It kind of felt like they could instantly go into it and knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it's probably the most impressive thing I've seen with our platform. I came in on 5 years ago on what we call the construction team. So what our job was to talk to people who, again, free download, so you can just find, hey, I need construction management app. Fieldwire always popped up. People would download it. They'd start using it, and our job was to reach out. Once they signed up. You reach out 2 weeks in, they're like, oh, well, I got all this, I did this. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? How else can I help you? Like, you figured it out on your own. And that's by design. That's the way our co-founders, Eve and Javed, they came from the gaming industry and the world of the gaming. It's like, yeah, start playing. Hey, you're going to figure it out because it's intuitive. And that's where our co-founder, he had a construction background, was really heavy into BIM. And he actually was like, I see BIM everywhere, but I see it in the office. I see it on every project, but I only see it in the office. It's like, well, how's our field team doing? Like, what do they get? And they still are printing out, like, you have a 3D model, which is incredible. Right. It's beautiful. Right. And then you have still 2D paper plans going on. You're like, there's a disconnect here. Sure. So he went into the gaming industry, learned how to build a really good product, and then came back and said, all right, what does the field team need? And this was the advent of BlackBerry's dying, iPhones are going up. Hey, there's a nice screen, the app, consistency, all this great stuff happening. And what they did was they built out a nice, easy to use app that tracked tasks and activities on a job site. And then context of, well, where is this at on a plan digitally? So anyone could pull up their phone. iPad started becoming a big deal, 2013. It's still, I think, a big deal with the iPads, but a lot of people are just using those smartphones. I think everything's optimized for that. And that's true enablement, right? Like, if I'm using this to do text, to send, emails, why can't I use a software that is going to manage my projects doing that? And yeah, we've stayed true to that ethos of field first, field friendly, And then you get more insights as a project manager because you're like, oh, my team's actually using this. It's kind of like back to your Polaroid picture. It's like, yeah, we would take photos, send it out. It's like, okay, well, if you don't know how to use a camera, how are you supposed to take photos? And that's how we are. It's like, if you don't know how to use the software and you can't use it intuitively, how are you supposed to use it? And that's kind of where we stay in the market. And we don't go too far off our base of like, hey, we're going to integrate this next AI / whatever tool it is. We're going to stay home on making sure people can get their information in there, whether that's through text message or just messaging, and then adding photos, and then getting that data in the cloud and making sure it's stored on their device. So yeah, it's been fun seeing, just the adoption of people in the field, people I used to work with, learn from. I get to do that at a scale that I never thought possible being, on the technology side, because I get to talk to people globally about using our software.
That's awesome. I mean, and that's what's happening, right? Because you're easy to adopt, that's what makes them successful. I mean, that's the whole, that's why iPhones worked so well, right? When you look at why iPhones were so crazy successful, it did these 10 things really, really well, right? I could take a picture, I could make a phone call, I could get to my music. It had this handful of items that were like one button away from working, where before I carried all these different devices, and it made it, that much harder to figure out. And then once you figured that out, then you could venture over to the App Store and you could add on the different things that you wanted to. But at least you had the basic functionality of it. And I think that's always the way great great rollouts have to be. Keep it simple for the rollout, and then as they develop and you hear what the clients need, then you can really start to create a larger ethos that makes it easier. But when you make these 300-pound gorillas that are so expensive, people can't afford them, and the problem is they buy them and they can't get into them. And it's great to have a 300-pound gorilla, but if you're using 50 pounds of it, but you're paying for 300 pounds, it makes it upside down, and people start to click off and going, hey, look, we just can't afford. That's not really making us productive. It's really tying us down.
Yeah, marketing wins a lot of times, unfortunately, which marketing's always, it's there. I mean, it's important because it gets the name out there. It gets, people excited, but you get to that point where, oh, now I have to use it. And now what was sold to me as a simple, easy to use solution, how much work do I have to do now? Oh, is my team actually going to use this? So that's where I think we talked about it a little bit. I'm starting to see the development of, and I didn't coin this, I'm not the person to give credit to this, but the role of the construction technologist. There's a lot of people out there moving the industry forward, making sure like, hey, let's talk about the problems we have right now. I don't want to use too much of those people's stuff, but it is good to hear those conversations, whether it's in webinars, podcasts, industry events about the difficulties we've had. I think it's actually started to transfer back to, well, how do we make it more simple to integrate or to build on a software and have our team leverage this and get the right data. I actually talked to someone just 3 months ago. They were like, I love Excel and I love PDFs, and I'm like, if it works, right? Like that's where it's at right now. But like sometimes we're oversold. We're like, oh, well, you need to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, hey, I'm a $500 million company and I have a good accounting software, and Dropbox kind of worked for me. Maybe I needed to be a little bit smarter about like how my field team gets their data because they're just printing out everything. And that's where we come in. We're like, okay, well, let's take you to the next level on just connecting the teams and making sure you have a good cloud solution that your team can view the plans, have access to all the information they need, whether that's files, submittals, RFIs, and then actually start coordinating and planning the work and documenting what's happening on the job site. And then the third thing is just the easy reporting. Like, I used to be a project engineer. A lot of my colleagues that we hire come from the industry, project engineers, project managers, APMs. We all always discuss our battle scars of, we would collect all this great data, and then I'd spend all Friday trying to put together a report. Yeah. And, a simple thing, a punch list report. It's like, we have to format it in Word and all this stuff, or Excel. And it's like, got to take my phone, airdrop the photos to this report. That's where we're saved. That's where I see a lot of our project engineers be like, you guys are saving me so much time. Like, Friday afternoon's a click of a button and that's it.
That's the thing. You do this punch list walkthrough, and great superintendents set up the subcontract. Look, we're doing a punch walk tomorrow, or next week. We're going to do it next week. and schedule the subs to be there the next day. Just schedule them. We tell all of our supers, schedule them to be there the next day. But the problem is if you can't get the punch list there until a week later, and that was always the problem, right? You're exactly right. By the time you take the pictures, download them to the system, organize and put notes behind every one of them. With Fieldwire, you guys go in and you can do that. Boom, 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 right down the list. And that's what you're looking for. The punch list is done. Created and done when you're done walking through the site, and you can boom, edit and distribute to everybody pretty quickly. And that's the differentiating factor, right? When we start to look at the spots where I don't have to wait and create and have this big, this big overwhelming task that nobody has time to do, because first of all, by the time you get to punch list, our teams are freaking exhausted.
Yep.
I mean, everybody on it's been frustrated. Our superintendents have worked. I mean, our teams work really hard, and by the time you get to punch, they're exhausted and they're frustrated, and now you're asking, you got to take another step. You got to take one more step for us, get this punches done in 7 days so that our customers can operate and open perfectly, right? And that's what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing, I have a guilty pleasure I do at Fieldwire. I go into the App Store, whether it's the Google Play Store or iOS Store, and I always just pull up the app and be like, okay, let's read some of the most recent reviews. We're getting like 7 reviews a week, which for a construction app, for people to write in there and go and give 5 stars and be like, oh, this is incredible, save me so much time. It's my guilty pleasure. I do it like once a month just to be like, hey, how are we changing the industry? Because I talk to our customers. Our customers are pretty developed. They have their workflow. They're giving us feedback. I'm like, oh, it'd be great if you guys did this. And we're taking that in our feedback cycle and making sure our product team's aware. Prospective clients that I talk to, they have some tech, like they definitely have some issues that they want to solve. But it's those end users who's like a foreman who's like, hey, I'm a foreman. I used to use this app, or I never used an app, and this is saving me an hour a week. And I'm like, that's the difference. Like that's, I think, where we truly look at it's app-based. It's saving people directly in the field time. I always like to use the triangle whenever I'm talking to anyone. I'm like, hey, at the field level, we have a lot of people in the field. At the top, at the project manager level, like, yeah, there's a couple people making decisions there. But a lot of software has been built at the top of the triangle. It's been built for, hey, accounting, scheduling. Important always, because that's how we stay in business. But when we have issues with that costing, scheduling, it's like, well, what caused this? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not on the site every day. My foreman is, my superintendent is. How are they communicating? They're not, or they're text messaging, they're emailing, and it gets lost. Having a centralized spot is where Fieldwire has been helping a lot of people throughout that construction process.
I find what's great about Fieldwire is the consistency of the reporting. Right. What's really tough is we'll get, with old software, we would have one team that was great at it. There's this team over here, they're great every day. Boom, 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 they're out. But then another team over here, like, an old school person, like, nah, I can't, I'm not doing that. And I'll turn them over on time, but I'm not reporting that way. If you don't like it, we'll quit. And, that made it difficult to be workable as a team. And you got a couple of those old school superintendents who are like, I'm not going to adapt. But if we can make the software so easy that even the hardest of the supers can use it, that becomes where we really become workable across the entire team. Our customers start to expect and count on us delivering consistent reports every single day, and we can see everything that's happening, right? So it's great. So their project managers can see it. They can look through pictures and clearly see things and catch things before they end up on a punch list later on. They can adapt and draw on them and put a note on there. Hey, what about this? And what about that? And get it back to the team, and they can answer that or make an adjustment before they get out on their weekly visit. And it is ultimately what we wanted in a software, is that a system that we can communicate with consistently every single day.
Yeah, that you brought up something that just like it was part of the reason why I joined Fieldwire. I was talking to our co-founders when I was in an interview, and I had no business being in construction tech. I had tested some stuff with my previous contractors and used some stuff, but they reached out and I was like, hey guys, like I like the industry. I like being in here. They're like, you can get into the industry at a global scale. But the one thing I remember having a conversation in the interview with Eve Javed and my VP, Marielle, who also comes from the industry, and was, they were selling me on the company. And they're like, how many RFIs have you written in the last 2 weeks? And I'm like, I don't know, that's gonna be hard for me to determine. Like, I'm always involved in RFIs. And they're like, why do they need to be RFIs? And for sure, there's definitely some things from the design side definitely need an RFI, but people are writing so many RFIs instead of just asking a question. And, people are afraid like, oh, text message, that's not a right way to ask a question. But using our app, we can categorize the data, put it in, a time record, and use that as just a means of communicating where it's like, yeah, just ask a simple question. I can give you a simple answer instead of you writing an RFI, it going through that, 14-day review cycle and, having to get that all answered. So that was what first attracted me to the platform, is like, not just like punch lists, but it's a means of communicating and being like, yeah, we can make some professional adjustments here because in the contract we're allowed to, instead of, yeah, well, this is a big design issue. That's when we can, have that communication in there, and then like, yeah, let's escalate it to an RFI because I don't want to get in trouble for giving you a wrong response. But yeah, sometimes it's a simple Q&A and a response comes in and you're simple as that.
Well, that's ultimately the problem with the business where we all lose money, right? Waiting for answers on something. You're going 100 miles an hour. You get to stop, and there's an answer. I'm waiting for an answer from this guy. I'm waiting for an answer from that. This is where we start to really lose. Our margins are tight to win the job. We had to bid it, right? You said you'll do for this. I said I could do for that. Somewhere I had to win the project to get it. So my margins are tight. When I don't have answers I need, and I have to come back and I can't complete the work I need to do to move forward, in that becomes where my margins start lowering. Now, as I can communicate better, clearer, see ahead of my schedule, and really start to look at the path ahead of me in a much different way, I think ultimately that's where technology is opening the door, right? Where this dark cloud of what happens on a job site, and you can't see it, everybody can't see it. Look, if the architect, the project manager, the owner, and the entire team can collaborate all the time on a project, answers happen faster, right? Yep. And ultimately what that means is subcontractors and general contractors make more money. And I've proved that 1,000 times.
Yeah, that's the fun part about seeing software develop over time, is people are starting to be more accustomed. Like, yeah, I can use a software. Like, before it was like, oh, I have to train you on it. You come in, use our platform. Right away, you're like, oh, okay, this question, it's in my, we call it related tasks. It's like, oh, I'm tracking this conversation. So every time something happens, I get a notification. I get to understand, do I need to have input on this? I get assigned a task. Yeah, now I can ask my input, or it's directed towards me. I think that's where I'm starting to see a lot more adoption, because if you start to look at, let's just use a simple construction management process, which is important, submittals, RFIs. You're getting to that point of who's supposed to do this and how long do I have to answer? Whereas like if you're just keeping it to simple communication, you don't have to worry about that. You're just like, hey, I'm going to respond because the job needs to get this done and it's going to be done faster if I can give them a quicker response. So I see that all the time. The other one I'm starting to see, which I talked about like future tech, is, the point cloud data capture that a lot of people are doing, or robots going on site, capturing data. I think those are really cool options. And that's another medium to collaborate. But what I've heard is like the turnaround time on that stuff. It's starting to get
it's getting faster.
It's getting faster, but it's also like, yeah, I get something, processes a week later. That's not the job site anymore.
No.
And that's the unfortunate part, is like, oh, we can replace being there inside or just having a simple conversation with, oh no, I'm living in the cloud space. I don't want to use metaverse, but I just did. I'm living in the metaverse on the project side. And it's like, well, how up to date is that? Like, so I think you're seeing a lot of different tech out there that, yeah, I think it's going to get there at some point. And, you always talk to industry, industry people that, we work with, and like, yeah, no, the pilots are going okay. I like what I see, but yeah, we're probably a couple of years away from this. And there's a lot of cool stuff that I think people are liking to. I say, it's funny, whenever I say cool, I'm like, that means it's not there yet. Whenever I say, oh, it's a cool technology, it's like, yeah, in theory and concept, but where's the value add? It's there in a couple of years, maybe. And that's what we're seeing. But I've said this for a lot of my 5 years, is it's a couple of years away, and, it keeps pushing out a little bit more. And that's why I love Fieldwire, because I'm like, well, I know it's going to add value once we get it in the hands of everyone on your team, because it's proven. It's, we're an established company. The software's been there for a while, and we've had great feedback, and it's worked on, $1 billion+ jobs. So that's what's fun with me. It's like, I get to stay in my lane and know what I know and stay there, where, yeah, I think some other things I have to be cautious of on saying like, yeah, it works.
No, I got you. We had a group of developers on the other day, and he's like, "Well, how? What do I need? Why do I need digital twinning for my sites here? Why do I need to look at my building that way?" And look, we get it. You look at metaverse; it's this big thing, and I said, "Look, you're not needing it today." But what we're looking to do now is start to aim our ships that way, because what's going to happen is, as we develop projects, right, and we start to look at things in Revit, and we really start to be able to look at the model itself and individual components of the module, which will make the metaverse. Look, having a 3D picture in a point cloud is cute, right? But it doesn't really give me that, and that might be level one of the metaverse. But to get to the metaverse, we really want to impact where I can interact with it like I'm interacting with you now live in the studio, right? It's a different level. We've got to be able to get to component data, right? Where we look at each and the Revit type, those model type, where I'm looking at individual components, the track, the stud, the drywall. When I can look at the individual component, now what happens is what will happen later will be a much more robust interaction with that job site from far away. Now, that same thing translates from the job site that we're building to the job site that somebody's renting, right? When developers start to look at their buildings in these 3D models, and I can go to a brand and go, look, here, I'm gonna send you over exactly what the space looks like, and I have an exact twin of it. Now what happens is they can make the adaptable, take that project and adapt it to their concept, and they can pull out budgets a lot faster. Now, people ask me, well, going to Revit's going to be tough. It's more expensive. I'm like, at first it is, right? At first, as we make those transitions into this, in order for us to really serve what later on will be a much faster way to develop projects, right? The metaverse, why will metaverse be much, all that stuff would be great. Tools like Fieldwire, as they continue to grow, and look, today it does exactly what it needs for the model that's there today, right? It's got this great tool that supports the construction industry with fun and ease. I mean, you guys, I say depth and weight. You guys have great information. It carries, easy to operate. But as the construction sites start to get smarter and smarter and smarter, all those other things that will serve the metaverse, I think, become really important, but not today. Like you said, it's still a little bit way out there to get there, but they're heading there now. And if construction companies aren't starting to get themselves digitally organized, getting things like Fieldwire into their system, as this thing continues to develop, it'll be harder and harder to catch up. And with things like Fieldwire, now you start getting your systems in place, your processes in place, and digital production of construction only works when it's in the process, right? It doesn't work where later on I build it and then try to digitally copy it. It's too much of a lift to get there.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying here is where I think we talked about this pre-show, that construction technologist is starting to develop, because I think every company is starting to look at, I have to start considering things. I have to, what is the future, but also what is current. And I think that's the most, I wouldn't say transformative thing I've seen in companies, but it's a new role. I think there's, you had your early adopters or, very teams that were building innovation teams in when I was at Stanford in, the SciFi program, or, in the SciFi lounge or the lab. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it the wrong way, but, back, you have great people, great minds, forward thinking. There were construction companies in there giving feedback, really building on, Revit, BIM, whatever it was at the time. And now those companies are in a place where that team is fully established. But there's a lot of these, I would say, even companies that have grown into, top E&R companies that still didn't have that when I first came into the industry. And now, even 5 years ago, it was like, okay, well, I get to dabble in the technology, but I don't get to actually have this as my job. But you're starting to switch that over. I was listening to the Dorkcast the other day, and they did a whole thing on what they call unicorns. And the unicorn is that role that, hey, I was in BIM VDC because that was tech before tech was a thing. But then they got to a top line of like, well, what do I do now? Right. Like it kind of has its limitations when you're at a certain level. But now what I'm starting to see is like these construction tech people, their job is to help evaluate the technology that's out there that, hey, maybe we work with a company that has a MVP and it's like, okay, well, we just want to give them feedback and we get to use this for free. that's their job. But also on their job is like, well, we're paying all this money for this technology. What's it doing for us? Where's the value add? And so we've actually, worked with a lot of these people who had this as like their half job. Like maybe they were a project manager into tech, and they're starting to get more of that role as a technology, construction technologist, or whatever they want to call it. Business. I've seen it be called a lot of things at companies, depending on whatever the comfort level is. But you're starting to see those people be the leaders at companies and making sure like, yeah, I don't want it to just be, I'm spending money because it's cool. I'm spending money because it's adding value. And
it's got to add value. It will not last. It will not get implemented. I've run this company for 24 years. We've watched them come and go. It's got to add value. It's got to be something that across the board is easy to implement, and it's got to show return on its investment. Because if not, I can't justify, right? I can't justify cool toys without a return
cool
on
toys,
it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens. It becomes like someone walks in, oh, I got a cool toy to play with, and then people look at you like, oh, not another cool toy.
But that's how we are. We're like, hey, if we can't add value or solve a problem. Fine. Like you don't need us. Like we fully understand that. There's a lot of companies that have issues that we can solve. And that's what I think is with anyone who's evaluating tech is trying to figure out, I like that, they came up to me at a trade show or I saw them at a trade show, but like, when is it going to add value? Take notes, put it in the memory bank of like, hey, let's put a calendar invite out in a year and follow up with them because yeah, maybe it will add value or at least like refreshing where, what's going on with that company. And we've had that with Fieldwire where people have used a different project management system and they're like, okay, well, we got to talk to Fieldwire. That's great. I know what they do. They cold call us a year, 2 years later and like, hey, we're in just a reevaluation phase. Like we like our PM system, but like, maybe we don't like the whole like value add it's adding or like what you said. It's like, I'm using 10% of this 500-pound gorilla. I can't remember your metaphor there, but yeah, I think you get people who are like, yeah, like I thought I was going to use all this, and I'm actually only using this, and that's perfectly fine. But people are coming to those decisions because they have someone in place who's really helping that, and it's not just IT. Yeah. Like people always used to say like, oh, it defaulted to IT, and it's like, well, IT. Yeah, some of them like to take that on, but a lot of them like to say in the hardware, in the networking side, and that's, their true calling or passion. It's not, oh, I don't want to evaluate software or, this next tech out there. But like, yeah, you kind of have to have that person willing to look at the value add software or the value add technology that's going there.
That's always been our problem, right? At one time it was, so we have so many different silos. You've got the business development team and they've got their silo. You've got the accounting team and they've got their silo. You got the estimating team and their silo, the project management team, and then you've got the field team, and they're all little silos. And they know what's good for their silo. Finding someone that can look across the advanced part of it. Today, like you said, it's become a role, right? We've got a VP of operations that spends as much time working on software. First of all, making sure that we don't spend money on a bunch of different softwares that we're only using 10% of them across them. So what's the ones that we can use, what softwares will implement to the most groups, communicate to the most. Now, the other problem is that all of our clients would show up with different softwares. So at least we know that with Fieldwire, we're doing something that's consistent. Every client we have wants a report. And if our commitment was, let's just get static on making sure that daily reporting happens exactly. Nobody leaves a job site ever without having daily reporting, no matter what it is. Small remodel jobs, big, multi-million-dollar jobs. Every day our reporting is robust and it's clear. And if we just started with that, we just started with one was field every single day having a great report that showed exactly what we're doing and communicated to everybody from the owner, the architect, the everything that we needed, so that everybody had a clear picture of expectations and what people are waiting for, what people are working on. So I think that was a great way to start, right? And then we sort of added on some other stuff that we grew from there, and we got smarter. And I think that's where you guys come back and do it a little bit more implementation. And go ahead and try on this module.
Yeah, and that's where I've lived in my career here at Fieldwire. It's like, yeah, you guys are doing the basics. I love that. You mentioned daily reporting. That's always kind of the additional step that we see people rolling into, because it's like, hey, what are you doing there? And it's like, well, we're using Fieldwire. We have this, and it's like, but we want like a nice report at the end of the day. And it's like, okay, well, let's teach you that. And then let's get you into, well, what are you doing for safety? And then we start to learn about their safety processes. The nice thing is it's a consultative approach. It's not, hey, I'm not going to try and sell you on this if you don't need it, or try and find problems that you don't have and, throw our solution at it. It's just trying to understand, like, yeah, does this work? Does this not work? And what problems are we trying to solve? And yeah, the side we take, and this is why, like, I always like to talk about, like, well, would I go back into the industry and be a construction technologist for a company? It'd be awesome. But the thing I like about Fieldwire and my role here, and I get people reaching out on LinkedIn, like, how'd you make the transition to tech? It's like, well, it depends. Like, do you like being at a company that you can just run that project for the foreseeable future? Where at Fieldwire, we're in and out with different companies. I like the exposure to the national level. Like, you get to work with subs, you get to work with owners, architects, engineers, GCs. And it's like, man, I get the insight that I don't think I would have ever had if I stayed with the company I did, which there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like, staying at that company, like, that's how you run a business. Where I'm at is I'm learning how to just be consultative, learning the different approach, because someone who does, is a GC in Chicago is definitely a different type of GC in Texas, because different trade unions, whatever you're doing, different vendors, materials. I always go back to in college, my professor, he was like, Russell Clough, great guy. He was like, yeah, like, if you learn how to do construction in San Francisco, just wait till you move to Seattle, because you don't know your concrete person. You don't know your different subcontractors. It's a whole new game. Like, the processes might be the same, but the people part, that's the part that's going to be different. And that's the exposure I get, and what makes it fun for me, and why I've stayed at Fieldwire for so long.
Well, I think that's something that, we're a national general contractor, and you bring up a great point. We have new subs all the time. And if our people are spending time doing things that are unnecessary, to find data, to communicate to everybody, it makes it really, really difficult. If we can create a process that's always consistent, right? When we pull into a new city and we communicate with the vendors, we go through their scope, we go through all the learnings we have on other projects, we bring that to their contracts and their communication tools. But then how do we communicate to that subcontractor so that it's, it was always hard when safety became a thing. And superintendents were like, well, I can't, I'm tired of busting people's chops about putting hard hats on. I'm like, but you don't understand. If you don't do that, they look at you like an unprofessional job site, right? And people want to show up and go, oh, these are how the pros do it. Well, updating reports and communication tools are exactly the same thing. If you can't get answers or find stuff, or the subs can't get to a place where they can pull information off, you're not a professional organization to work for. And they've worked for those people before, and they don't want to work for them, right? Because it's painful, right? They don't make any money, right? When we pull out a job site and they see our systems, they know that there's a group of people who know how to do this. And oftentimes they're modeling that same behavior when we leave, right? So I feel like our processes raise their standards, and ultimately we leave them better than we found them. And that's what I want. I want to be able to have us walk out going, look, by operating with that subcontractor, they made more money because they worked with us and they elevated their game. By the way, that's how some of our clients are. There's groups like McDonald's who we've worked with for years, and they've elevated our game, right? By operating in their system in such a way, you'd be surprised, right? That company's grown us by the way they operate. And I say that the way that we operate shows what kind of company that we are. And, certainly having great communication tools like Fieldwire is one of those.
Yeah, I smile and glow when you say that, because that's where I get my joy in working at Fieldwire. It's like, we are helping that business process, and in turn, you're going to be looking more professional, and you're going to be moving your subs or your GC forward, or owner, whoever it is. And that's the fun part about, what you do as far as like being in the industry. It's, well, obviously I'm making money. That's always everyone's first step. But I got lucky to work for a large GC and learn the importance of quality and safety and making money. It wasn't like in schedule and whatnot, but it wasn't, hey, one takes more precedent over the other. It's, no, we're going to be professional because these are our owners and we want repeat business with them. So that's how I always had that mentality. And it's carried over because of the quality of our product, the quality of our organization, of, are we taking care of the customer and helping them get to the next level with our product? And if we're not helping them get to the next level, we're solving their problems. It's like, okay, well, what's the issue? Is it us? Is it them? Is it our processes? We want to understand that, because we want good clients. And I think that's the nice thing about us. And like, we get good clients because they naturally, organically find us. And, there's a value added before we even talk to them, and they already know it. And so that's it's always been fun with us. Yeah.
Well, Dominic, as companies want to get all pro'd out, right? They want to look professional and hook up with you at Fieldwire and bring on a software package that really can help change their business. And, I certainly know what that feels like. You guys have got a great system to operate in. If they want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be, we do have our website. I always like to say, you can go to a landing page and, fill out everything. We have a nice little chat feature. But I like just to have those initial calls with people or someone on our team, because we want to understand that. So if you do ever need to get a hold of me, you probably go to me. I could always put you to the right person, Dominic@fieldwire.com. But yeah, I said this earlier, it's a freemium model. You just go into the App Store, look Fieldwire up, download it, put in your email address. We'll probably prompt you at some point to be like, hey, do you want to talk more to our people? That's another way we'll get you in the door. But I like to say, go download the app first, take a look at it, use it, see if it works for your job site, then reach out. That's an easier way for us because we want you to experience it before, you really understand, hey, well, tell me all the good stuff about it. And it's like, well, experience it. That's more fun for us. And yeah, I personally love showing our product. You can talk to anyone at our company like, oh yeah, don't get him started on the product because he'll go there for hours if you ever want to talk about workflows. And I'm sorry to my clients who've experienced that with me. But it's always fun to have these conversations.
You love the software. Listen, I love that you love it, right? Yeah. I love that you're passionate for it. Yeah. And when you talk about it, you really get your passion. Yeah. And by the way, that's what we want. There's so many great places in our business to be in the construction world where, it's never been a better time to be in the construction field, right? If you want to be a construction technologist, which I love that term, or you want to work, in any part of it, technology is now coming into it so much better. So, Dominic, I've loved having you on the show. I look forward to having Fieldwire on again as you guys continue to grow and do inspire the business and do more amazing things. I'd love to have you back on and show me more toys. And listen, I know the folks over at Hilti picked you for a reason. I know they're doing some cool. That company is the most innovative ones out there, and it's fun to be around. What they're doing there. So. Congratulations, and we look forward to having you on the show some more.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anthony. It's been great. I loved touring the office. That was it's quite the place here. If you've never been here, you got to hit Anthony up and come out because it was cool. I've been to some offices. This one it's up there for sure.
Fine. Thanks. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Anthony Amunategui, always looking for people to bring insight into the industry, finding ways to inspire people to have amazing careers in the development world. If you liked our podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really liked our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Thanks again for listening. Please share it with your friends.